I'm assisted today by Jean. We are your technical support for this session. Without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Ms. Caitlin Waddick. You guys are in great hands. I'm really looking forward to this session. And please, if you have any questions, send them in the chat and we will get right on them. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. This is day 3 of the 2nd International Conference on Environmental Peacebuilding. There is a complete agenda for this conference, so do take a look. There'll be a link to that in the chat. And the conference has a code of conduct. There's a link for that in the chat too. Please do read it before you have a problem. It's really well done, and it's part of our community of practice, which is why we have an Environmental Peacebuilding Association. So this session is securing clean water in transboundary Indus, Jordan, Mekong, and Amazon River basins through science and environmental diplomacy. You just met David, who's one of our technical support people. Jean is the other one. And we're grateful for their support and for this conference being free, as David mentioned earlier. So our group began with, has been doing a few events for the Road to Geneva events. And this roundtable is meant to highlight some of the findings that are community-based science and environmental diplomacy approaches to identifying some of the solutions for securing clean water across and within transboundary river basins. We have 4 focal river basins. The Indus, which crosses India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, China. The Jordan River Basin, which crosses Israel, Palestine, and Jordan. The Mekong, which crosses China, Laos, Cambodia, Myanmar, Thailand, and Vietnam. And the Amazon, which crosses Ecuador, Brazil, Peru, Colombia, Bolivia, Guyana, Suriname, and Venezuela. So we have a panel coming, and we have many panelists, and they represent these 4 focal basins. And we will have 3 questions, and we'll have the panelists go first, and then we'll open it up to Q&A from the audience. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the organization Twin, and then Ben Ryan will tell you about the Road to Geneva events that led us to this panel. And then Susan Sgorbati is going to tell you about, is going to moderate for our 3 speakers. And Bindu Panikkar will do some final remarks at the end. Okay, did my screen started sharing? Okay, thumbs up, thank you. Okay, so my name is Caitlin Waddick, and I'm a Twin research fellow at Bennington College with the Center for Advancement of Public Action. So we need transboundary cooperation to solve today's water conflicts, and Twin's goal is to enable discussion to build cooperation through diplomacy at all levels. The goal is to find points of cooperation to break stalemates, to use principles of mediation and negotiation, to consider points of consensus and conflict. What are the positionalities of each stakeholder? Where are their value differences? What are the problem frameworks? We believe that science-informed, community-based actions can address conflict and essential needs of communities. So Twin is a network of networks that functions across and within each of the river basins that are a part. And we're trying to promote cooperation and collaboration among all the network stakeholders who have transboundary water challenges. We're a network of networks. We are scholars, activists, researchers, policymakers, practitioners. And we began with a collaboration between the Center for Advancement of Public Action at Bennington College and the Institute for Environmental Diplomacy at the University of Vermont. In 2017, we brought together 25 community groups around who work within the Indus Basin of Afghanistan and Pakistan. And those scientists and community organizations addressed water security. And the meeting was very successful. And because of that, Twin was formed. So these are the member organizations that make up Twin, arranged by River Basin. And we're a growing network. We're always looking for new collaborators from all sectors of society, as well as individuals. Oops, did I miss a slide? Here. And the basic idea is that we can share transboundary water resources in ways that are equitable and reasonable for all stakeholders. To try to improve border relations, water use practices, water quality, ecosystem services, and public health on all sides of the borders, and build resilience to climate change. Without my slide isn't okay, we'll just move out of that. So the next thing I want to tell you about. So anyway, that's a little bit about, did I exit or can you still see my screen? Okay, I'm admitting people. Good, we've had a bunch of people join us in the past 4 or 5 minutes. So welcome everyone who's just joined us. For the 20 some people who just joined us, thank you for joining us. And we are live. We've got nearly 50 people. Okay, you're letting people in, thank you. So before we go to our speakers, I would like to introduce them all, and then I would like, then Ben Ryan will tell us about the Road to Geneva events that led us to today. We're also putting a list of the speakers in the chat. So we've got three people joining us to speak about the Jordan River Basin: Clive Lipchin, Rabbi Michael Cohen, and Suleiman Halasah. Clive serves as the director of the Center for Transboundary Water Management at the Arava Institute in Israel, and he oversees projects focusing on transboundary water and environmental problems facing Israel, Jordan, and Palestine. His specialty is in water resources management and policy. Clive has conducted research for a number of international agencies such as the World Bank, UNDP, and USAID, and he's involved most recently with the European Union's Water Initiative. Rabbi Michael Cohen graduated from the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College and became the first full-time rabbi of the Israel congregation in Manchester Center, Vermont. Since 2000, he's divided his time between Vermont and Kibbutz Keturah in Israel. And he's been a visiting faculty member at Bennington College since 2012, teaching classes on conflict resolution and biblical studies. Suleiman Halasah is an electrical engineer with an MS in science from Ben-Gurion University, where he founded Global Sun Partners, a renewable energy company that works on building solar power plants in several countries in the world. He also served as a panelist on topics of water security and climate change. From the Amazon River Basin, we have Maria de Pilar Cornejo Rodriguez, and Sandra Megans, I think, will not be joining us today, but she will be joining us for the session we're doing tomorrow. Pilar is a professor at Espol Polytechnic's University, where she is the director of the Pacific International Center for Disaster Risk Reduction. She has been teaching aquaculture for over 34 years and has worked with climate impacts upon sociological sectors in the humid tropics of the Americas, integrated water management, environmental sustainability, and disaster risk reduction. For the Mekong River Basin, we have Richard Friend, Teerapong Pomun, Tansen Bach, Julie Clausen, and Qian Ye. Richard Friend is a member of the Working Group for Program Design of the York Interdisciplinary Global Development Center. Much of his work has supported participatory action research and opening space for informed public dialogue, as well as focusing on regionalization, urbanization, and climate change in the Mekong River. Teerapong Pomun is the director of the Mekong Community Institute and Living River Association, an environmental NGO based in Chiang Mai, Thailand. He has over 30 years of experience in environmental conservation. His work deals with supporting local communities' rights to their water resources and promoting local knowledge-based sustainable water resource management. Tan Sin Bach has more than 20 years experience on policy analysis in the field of science, technology, and innovation policy, as well as environment and sustainable development in Vietnam. He has been conducting over the last 5 years research on governance and institutions of disaster risk management, including flood management and climate change adaptation. Julie Clausen was one of the founding partners of the Fisheries Conservation Foundation, exploring new methods for fisheries outreach and education and ways to engage with the natural resource constituents. Now she serves as Director of Operations, where she has worked on projects both in the United States and abroad in the Bahamas, Canada, Bhutan, and Mexico, making strides to further fisheries conservation efforts. Qian Ye is an internationally known climate expert with particular interest in the social impact of global climate change. Since 1993, he has worked in both US and Chinese research education institutes, including the National Center for Atmospheric Research, University of Colorado, Chinese Meteorological Administration, Chinese Academy of Sciences, and Beijing Normal University. This morning, we have 2 people joining us from the Indus River Basin. We would have had a third, but Mujahid Hussain is not feeling well today, so we hope to see him soon. Ashutosh Mohanty is an international researcher, professor, mentor, and practitioner. He has over 19 years of academic and professional experience in more than 15 countries. He is serving as Dean and Professor of Research and International Cooperation of the Center of Excellence in Disaster Management and Environment at Madhyan Chal Professional University. Saeed Khan is a doctoral student in geomorphology at the University of Beirut. I'm not sure how to pronounce this. His research interest lies in exploring climate change and human migration nexus in the mountain communities of the Eastern Hindu Kush region and how it is linked to climate change in the wider socioeconomic and political context of northern Pakistan. And then we have several people joining us from the Twin Secretariat, which is the leadership team right now for Twin that is building capacity for Twin as we get the organization going. I don't know which order to go in. Asim Zia, his research, teaching, and outreach activities focus on advancing the sustainability and research of integrated socioeconomic systems. He has led the National Science Foundation, the USDA, and MacArthur Foundation funded team science projects that are aimed at computational models of socio-ecological systems. He is serving as a professor of public policy and computer science at the University of Vermont. He is director of the Institute for Environmental Diplomacy and Security, and he was recently appointed as a Fulbright Global Scholar to lead a project on this topic. Bindu Panikkar, who will be giving closing remarks today, is an assistant professor at the University of Vermont. Her work intersects environmental justice, environmental health, science, technology, and society studies. She is a co-founder of Twin and is a co-founder of the Rural Environmental Justice Informed by Community Expertise and serves on the board of Community Action Works. Our co-moderator today who will be moderating the Q&A and working with the panelists. Susan Sgorbati. Susan is the director of the Center for Advancement of Public Action at Bennington College, as well as the co-founder of Twin. She has instituted a new program at Kappa that started this fall around building regenerative and resilient communities that brings together areas of study in food systems, water quality, renewable energy, social justice, and sustainable finance. And the person who will speak next, right after me, is Ben Ryan. Ben is a doctoral student with the Department of Sustainable Development Policy, Economics, and Governance at the University of Vermont. He works with the Institute for Environmental Diplomacy and Security, and he's been very involved in the creation and development of Twin. I read everyone's bios. We felt like it was really important. I know it took a solid 15 minutes to read everyone's bios, but and then we have extended versions of their bios in the chat at that link. But we just felt like we are so impressed with you all, with all of our speakers. And we didn't want to leave anybody out. And I just cannot believe how much expertise is involved. Just really appreciate everyone's dedication and commitment and work on this topic. So a quick overview of what's happening for the rest of our meeting. Yes, I will send some private messages in a moment as I'm reading emails coming in and catching up on chats. Okay. Next up, Ben will talk about the Road to Geneva events that led us today. Then we'll have Q&A from the three panelists, and our concluding remarks are from Bindu Panikkar. After I give the floor to Ben, Ben will introduce Susan, and Susan will bring us into the three questions we're talking about today. Thank you for bearing with me as I read all those bios. I hope it wasn't boring. I am just fascinated by everyone, and I'm so sad that we're not in person at the moment. So without saying more, let me hand it over to Ben. So Ben, talk to us.
Thank you so much, Caitlin, for that introduction of Twin and all the members. So can everyone see my screen? So hello, everyone. Thank you for coming today. For those of you who are not familiar, this is the Environmental Peacebuilding Association conference, the second international conference on environmental peacebuilding. My name is Benjamin Ryan, and I'm a research coordinator at the Institute for Environmental Diplomacy and Security, which is at the University of Vermont.
Hi, Ben. Hey, Ben, sorry to interrupt. Can you reshare your screen, please? Okay. People can't see it. You could stop screen share and then retry. That'd be great.
Okay.
Does everyone see that now?
No, we're still not able to.
Okay. Let's try.
Are you using two screens?
I don't think so.
Maybe.
Sorry. Hi, I think it's a setting. Okay, there we go. Thank you.
We see you.
Okay.
Oh, all right, maybe try and screen share it down.
I just changed the setting to try again.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Is that better?
Good.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you, everyone, for coming today. As I was saying, my name is Benjamin Ryan, and I work for the Institute for Environmental Diplomacy and Security at the University of Vermont, which is a co-founder of the Transboundary Water and Cooperation Network. And really today what I'm going to talk to you about is the continuation of the Road to Geneva events, which happened over the summer, this past summer, where we brought together many different stakeholders, including scientists, community activists, participatory action researchers, and community representatives in these 4 focal river basins that Caitlin was discussing. And these really are the twin watersheds that we're both focusing within and between to build environmental cooperation and peace building around the provisioning of clean water. So this event, as I said, happened over the summer, and we had 3 distinct events, which were about 3 hours each. The first one was really focused on community to community diplomacy, which is also known as track 3. And I will be briefly summarizing this and giving a platform to build off of, both with some video excerpts and some summation. So as you can see here, it was held on Zoom. And there were 3 overarching questions that we asked our participants to really address, both through a written form as well as through open-ended panel discussion like we're doing today. So it's very similar, and we're just trying to build off of these 3 questions, which the first question is really, what are the current challenges, anticipated problems with regards to access to provision of clean water? So it's really, what are the problems related to clean water access in these river basins? And what we found is within most of these river basins, the Amazon, the Indus, the Mekong, and the Jordan, there was a lot of similar drivers of water quality from industrial effluence and urbanization, as well as mining and dams, as well as some very regionally specific drivers of water quality, including glacial lake outburst flooding and groundwater extraction. And one of the main overarching challenges that came out of this discussion were governance issues and socio-political ones. So this is articulated with this quote here that Takis cited as both surface and groundwater systems are not actually being taken into account in the governance, as well as governance across scales from community all the way to national level policies. So I have a quick video excerpt here.
Special of specific events in several transboundary areas where the central government is not present. So this is a kind of building up trust with the people that is involved, and making visible also the presence of other groups that from the government perspective should not be included, but in my opinion, they are playing an decisive role in controlling the water resource in the area. So because I am working on polycentries in transboundary areas, I think that we need to include these groups, even if they are not legally recognized. So I guess the dialogue strategy is working, and we are a kind of model of that success until now.
Good. So this was Sandra, who I think is joining us today, talking about a river between Venezuela and Colombia and the challenges that she found around the integration of community and other entities into the governance process at the national level. So she identified a major problem, which many people have cited in their watershed, and has moved forward with some opportunities and solutions. And this leads us to our second overarching question, which we asked panelists of that event, as well as this event today, which is what is being done and what are the opportunities for community-based action to mitigate these clean water challenges. What we found is that there are many challenges within watersheds, which result from the lack of knowledge being shared and best practices being shared within watersheds between communities who rely on fresh water, as well as a lot of work is being done within watersheds at the project level by NGOs, which are not integrated. And a plethora of solutions did emerge, which I have not listed here, but I will play this quick excerpt of Nisar Memon really articulating well a couple of the challenges into the solution space.
The challenges that were described in the other, in the different Mekong and Jordan River basin are quite common to the Indus basin too. I just leave it to there because whatever has been spoken need not be repeated, but challenges are pretty common, and therefore whatever the solution that we work out in one area will also be helpful to the other areas, other basins too. Now on the question of the second question that's being talked about is the opportunities for community-based. I think fundamentally what I think the challenge remains is that community is a little bit divorced from the policy and the science. If I say not a little bit, quite a bit, I would say they're divorced from it. So as I said, the community is away from it. Therefore, what is really is needed is to establish the information as to what are the challenges, what are the advantages to the community, directly how it relates to them. And that could also lead us to the curriculum in the schools. I'm not talking of the colleges and universities, because that's where a community could get involved. And like, for example, if we're talking about the delta, then it is really the fishermen. If we're talking about the people in the mountain, then it is the early warning to them whether there is a tsunami coming or is there any kind of a natural disasters coming. Then if they were to know it earlier, then the community will be very much aware. So I think there is some of the things that they themselves do it, but I just would like to end it there, that there's a need for awareness, education, to bring the community into them. Thank you.
So there you can see Nisar Memon really talking about how education and awareness are key, as well as the integration of information both within and between watersheds, which offer a platform to build off of for trust building and peace building as well. And the final overarching question, which we asked of the participants then, and we continue to ask of them today, is what is the potential of citizen science, community science to facilitate community scale action? And you can see an overarching similarity with the previous questions and slides, but Sandra here in her quote suggests that there is low participation when collecting data and information locally. So there's a evident need and an evident power that communities hold, but there's a clear disconnection from integrating that into the larger systems of policy and scientific modeling and understanding. I have a brief.
There are many research have been done, but the local community don't have access, don't understand, cannot use that kind of knowledge. So I think the research, the type or villager research can translate, maybe we can do the platform or network about the local community research and scientific research. And yeah, the knowledge across the different network, local community don't know, don't have access. But the problem, the practitioner or the people who have a problem are local community. How can we make the network or make the local community can access to those information?
I would like to add 2 or 3 points when it comes to the water resource management or other kind of natural resource management. First of all, if we want to develop a capacity of a community towards the water resource management, I think first we should develop the sense of ownership regarding those watersheds, those forests, and are these the natural resources. So they will feel like these are things belongs to us. They will protect it and would manage these resources in a sustainable way. The second thing, the point which could be could build their capacity is the inclusion of the indigenous knowledge. Okay, sometimes we speak to them in a scientific way, which they do not understand. Okay, and we should, I think, respect their indigenous knowledge when it comes to the solution. Okay, and the third point is that we should work on raising their economic well-being. If they are poor, they do not care about the natural resources and their proper management. So these are the three points which I think should be when we want to build the capacity of the communities.
Yes.
For my perspective, because I have studied about the all the 2-3 river basins that I work in, the like Indus and Brahmaputra and Ganges. In fact, I find like there is a definitely the challenges are very common. There is a challenge like governance, water governance, and the dams. There is inbuilt between the country. There is a not sharing the information and database that how inflow water that goes to the the sharing the among the countries. That is the major challenges. And in fact, the climate change, because we are academia and we have studied last 30 years of water inflow and what is the climate change impact of the glaciers. So we have to have some kind of information, database, knowledge, and also some kind of knowledge sharing between the universities. That secondly, the opportunity is we have a very good data among the collaboration among the researchers among the South Asia, because we have working with 2-3 like ICMOD. I work as a scientist for 4 years, so we have a very good information that we share between the Pakistan, India, and Afghanistan, because I have been associated with 3 countries. So these information could be properly packaged and to be properly managed and shared with the countries, that scientific academia communities, so that the future, if you see that the solution could be evolved, and then we could have some kind of common mechanism to manage the water resources, to provide the clean and safe water. That is the main purpose. Community impact, that the main major, the thrust, that the community can manage themselves. They have own, as ma'am said, local knowledge, as well as they know how to manage the water resourcefully for the future. So they have to include on all the decision makings. So this information should be properly integrated into action plan, so that all the future for managing the all affairs of water resources, they have to a big player, in fact, for just for many water resource management, because we are academia and we work several countries all along the Hindu Kush Himalaya, even the Mekong River Basin, because I was working and studied in Thailand. So I have some information on that, and we have a database with the various universities. So that should be integrated into an action plan for the future. So that's my brief about the topic.
Thank you so much, Professor Ashutosh. I just wanted to share my last slide here to build off Professor Ashutosh here. So just give me one moment. And can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So just as you were saying, really, the next stage of our work here in this panel today is really building off of what has been found and has been discussed thus far. We are going to be led by Susan through these 3 questions again, but the main findings of our previous meetings, though many, include the need for diverse knowledge and its appropriate application, which has been a pressing issue over many years, as well as integration and inclusion of community scale knowledge and action into governance mechanisms that transcend their scale, because these rivers and these watersheds are really governed by these transboundary transnational entities or large-scale entities. So without much more nuance, I'll give Susan the floor if you're ready to take it.
Yes, thank you. We'll just wait till we get everybody back on screen again. Is there a way to get? I'm just not seeing everybody on the screen.
You need to change your displaying settings, which you can find on the top right corner of the black screen. And changing.
Oh, gallery.
To gallery.
Yes, thank you so much. Okay.
Of course.
Okay, thank you, thank you. All right, well, welcome. We're running a little bit late, so I think we're going to now give 15 minutes to all the questions. And we'll begin with our first question. I wanted to just say thank you again to everybody who's here. We have a lot of people who've joined this session, and I encourage you all to really contact us at the website, transboundarywater.org, but also to email any of us to get involved. The network is continuing to really grow. So our first question, and I'm going to be now asking the 4 different river basin speakers we're going to only be able to have about a minute or 2 for you to just give a very brief response to the question. And then we really want to open it to all of our participants so that they can let us know. Let's see, I'm sorry, my computer is, get back to, yes, okay. To let for all of you to ask questions and give us responses to the question. So first question, what are the current challenges and anticipated problems with regards to access to provision of fresh, clean water in the focal river basins? And so I think we'll begin with the Jordan River Basin. I was not seeing Clive here on the call. I did see Suleiman. So Suleiman, would you like to get us started to respond to this question? And then if Clive is now on the call, or Michael Cohen, we can turn to them. And so if you could just be brief.
Yeah, hi, Susan. Thank you very much for this. I think there was some confusion about timing. Clive wrote me earlier today that he thinks this starts at 3, not at 2:30 in the Middle Eastern time. I'm now in England, so I'm totally in a different time zone. But also, I got that confusion, but I was lucky to join early enough. So sorry, can you please repeat the question?
Absolutely. So Suleiman, it really is, what are the current challenges? What do you see that the current challenges are with regards to access of fresh, clean water in the Jordan River Basin right now? What are you seeing the challenges in the most part when it comes to water and access to clean water?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's very obvious for anyone in the Middle East to say that actually climate change and the fluctuation of the rainfalls in the last few years is one of the main challenges. I can speak about Jordan mainly, where around 50% of the water resources in our water budget actually comes from surface water, and that's mainly, if not only, collecting the rainfall during the year and use that for both drinking and agriculture and other usages. There've been very serious challenges in the last few months. Actually, in Jordan, we noticed that in the media and among the public, where we had the incident of major, some of the dams actually drying out, which scared people because with all the uncertainty there, that what's going on, what's happening. Luckily this year, so far the season is good, but that's one of the main maybe drawbacks of the water strategy in Jordan, that it very much relies on an unreliable source, which is the rainfall. But climate change is like very obvious that it is one of the main challenges right now. It is the main challenge right now. And I see mainly one of the main ways to overcome that by mainly working as a region instead of for the countries to work individually. Because if we look at the region, then there is a very high potential for different initiatives to be designed and implemented based on water swap, energy swap, whatever, like that type of resource, regional resource management over there.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Suleiman. Okay, we're going to move on to the Amazon basin. And so I think Pilar and Sandra actually are here this morning. And so would one of you, maybe Pilar, just take this one, and then Sandra will ask you to respond to the next question. Is that okay, Pilar?
Yes, but I think Sandra will be answering tomorrow. So anyhow, the challenges are similar. Climate change is one of them. Regarding the country, in this case, Ecuador, we just finished, by the Environmental Authority, what will be the impacts of climate change. So that has to be downscale to each territory. So any mayor of any city and community will be able to know what they have to do to face the climate change impacts. But still, we will have several challenges that are the same all over, like pollution from agriculture, cattle, mining, petroleum exploitation, as well as the inadequate management of solid waste and wastewaters. And what happens usually in our case is that the budget is allocated in terms of the population that each region has. And we have few inhabitants in the Amazonian part of Ecuador, so the budget the mayors get is small. But we expect through the climate change adaptation and mitigation programs that the central government is promoting, and through the small sites for the REDD+ cases, that they look at these examples of success and they appropriate them so they can, face these challenges and reduce the problems that we are currently facing. Because what happened is people in those areas is not aware that whatever we do in Ecuador is going to go downstreams and impact the other parts of the Amazonian basin.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Pilar. Okay. Moving on to the Mekong River Basin. I think for this one, Julie and Teerapong, if you could respond very briefly, and then maybe Richard at the next question, we'll turn to you. So Julie, would you like to begin?
Sure. Thank you, Susan. First, I'd like to say it's not often that fish biologists get to meet with environmental peace builders. So I really thank you for recognizing that. I would say my perspective is all about ecosystem health. I believe that if the indicators in native aquatic biodiversity, including the fish and fisheries, are healthy, really so is everything else that follows. And the real challenges here are understanding, then recognizing and valuing these ecological connections, the direct connections to the fish and fisheries. And then, of course, bringing this to the diplomatic table. As many of you know, no one disagrees that fish and fisheries are important, but that these are just easily pushed aside with other immediate water issues. So, the challenge is really bringing this at the forefront. And it's really the long-term thinking, right? Placing this high value on the conservation of river systems, keeping some rivers dam-free and really protecting, protecting the ecosystem. And I think that's all I'll say for right now. Thanks.
That's great. Thank you, Julie. Teerapong, a brief response to the challenges.
Yeah, the problem in the Mekong, the first one is the dam in the mainstream and tributary climate change, agriculture, pollution from city, sand mining, and also water diversion. I think the main challenge is that the severe transboundary impact is new for the Mekong country. all of us, like all sector, government, agency, NGO, academic, we don't have knowledge and skill enough to solve the problem. The second one is the contestation and the politics among different countries in the Mekong country. Dynamic of the problem because it change all the time. Fragmentation and lack of collaboration. We need to both in the research and action. And the last one is the access to information. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, and then to the Indus River Basin, Saeed Khan, if you could respond to this question.
Yes, okay, thanks. So, of course, as the other panelists have said, there are kind of various challenges, some similar, but they kind of really vary when we look at the basin. So, for example, mountain communities are kind of differently affected as to those living in the deltas. So I think that's one of the challenge when we describe the problems or challenges. So, but overall, what we see is access to water is kind of influenced by climate change. Let's say increasing heat waves, floods, and droughts in the basin, which is kind of coupled with population growth and as well as the pollution of water. So that kind of all affects the overall access to water. And then I also see like even the kind of the situation in the major urban centers, for example, Karachi, Lahore in Pakistan, with regard to water is getting really worse. So it's not the rural communities, but also the urban center, which heavily relies, on the fresh water sources for their water consumption.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, I think we'll just have time for one question or response from our viewers. So if you wanted to put up the little yellow hand or just come on screen and let me know that you would like to do a response, and then hopefully we'll have a little more time after the third question for more people to respond. So is there anybody out in the people who are here, viewers, that would like to tackle what are the current challenges from where you are in the world, or where from your perspective and the work you've been doing? It would be wonderful to hear from you. Anybody? I'm not seeing anyone come on screen, but that might be me. If not, we'll just continue to go and then hopefully open it up later for questions. And please, Caitlin or Asim, if you see anybody and I'm missing someone, let me know. Okay, so let's go on to the second question. What is being done and what are the opportunities for community-based action to mitigate the sources of water pollution and facilitate access to clean water? What do we feel like the capacities are that are needed for this work? So we're really focused on community-based action, as you could see from, Caitlin and Ben's slideshows, and great voices, right, from very diverse communities around the world. And I should say that our neighbors in the Congo River Basin in Africa are joining us actually currently. And so we're excited to bring them into this network as well. So let's start now with, the Amazon River for this question. So where are you seeing the opportunities for community-based? And so Pilar, would you like to respond to that again? I am seeing Sandra on screen, but it may be that, she's not currently there. But Sandra, if you're here, definitely please respond.
Well, we have agreed between Sandra and myself that I will respond to them and she will do it tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow. Oh, okay, sorry. I thought she was going to be here. Okay, great, Pilar. So would you want to take this one then?
Yes, it's very important, this opportunity for communities. We have several within the reducing emissions from deforestation and degradation program, RED Plus. And one of them is very successful. It's called Sociobosque, which means partners in forests, which is a mitigation effort. So communities get paid to preserve the forest. They still do some agriculture and farming, but that is really friendly with the surroundings. And these kind of programs are very important. But also what is important is to show to the authorities, the administrative authorities that are on the territory, how successful these programs are, and what are the benefits for them and for everybody. So this will help even mitigate the problems that they have, like for example, also water pollution, facilitate the access to clean water, so they will expend less probably on working on water treatment or cleaning the water after the usage. So what is important is this, how we showcase these community-based actions to the local authorities so they help replicate it. Because most of the time they are seeing like, this is the main government, the central government doing some kind of experiments that is not close to us. So I believe that these kind of programs and opportunities have to be, showcased to everybody and mainly to the people who is in the territory.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. The Mekong, Richard, would you like to respond to this question?
Yes, I can respond, but I'm going to cheat a little bit, I'm afraid, because I'm going to also draw on that first question about some of the challenges, and it's partly because I'm now based in the UK, so I'm not so particularly the last 2 years, I'm not so directly involved in these community level initiatives. But I think part of what we need to do is shift in the way that we think about what the problems are and how we mobilize research, knowledge, science. And for me, these sort of hinge around understanding that for the Mekong in particular, it's a region of basins, and that sort of the political administrative boundaries do not correspond with the ecological boundaries. And it's a region of basins that are increasingly interconnected through investment infrastructure projects such as these river diversion schemes. So it's increasingly important to understand these issues of scale and mobilize around scale. And I'm sure my friends from the Mekong will be able to talk about some of the actions to address these challenges more directly. Historically, it's also important to understand the transformations that are occurring. And historically, the Mekong region, the Mekong Basin has been dominated by agriculture, by small-scale farming. It's been predominantly rural, and it's going through a massive, fundamental and dramatic transformation that we do not really understand. We don't understand the drivers and the implications adequately enough. But we're going through a period in which we're transitioning from an agricultural economy, agricultural rural livelihoods, to industrialized farming, urbanization, industrialization. That completely changes the landscape, but the waterscape as well, the demand, the use, and the management of water. And again, at the local and regional scales. I think another area that we have to really think about very carefully is the political governance environment. So it was not so long ago that we looked at the region as being on the cusp of a process of democratization. That appears to have been rolled back quite dramatically. We do not have democratic, accountable governments in place. There's increasing pressure on civil society and on academia. And the transboundary intergovernmental organizations and governance mechanisms that were set up to generate knowledge and to foster collaboration have really been found wanting. I think another issue we need to think about then is also how we mobilize about the way in which we think about water and the way in which policy addresses water. My feeling is that there is a tendency to see water through a lens of either blocking, diverting, or filling and reclaiming. And we really need to reframe the value and potentiality of water. We have institutions and infrastructure that are largely unfit for purpose. The large infrastructure around reservoirs, around dams, is consistently failing, particularly over the last 10 years as climate change hits. And again, we don't really understand how we can respond and adapt to these changing circumstances. And related to this, the institutional setups for dealing with water are also very weak. So there's a whole set of research challenges, if you like, that we need to be mobilizing around. And we're seeing, and certainly this is much of what I'm involved in at the moment. And I think the final point I'd like to say is that also then requires us to rethink the purpose of science and research and knowledge. So as one of my colleagues from the Mekong pointed out earlier, the Mekong fisheries is one of the most abundant, productive, valuable inland fisheries in the world. It's well documented. It's also well documented that hydropower dams will have a devastating impact on fisheries and on nutrition and on livelihoods. And yet all those dams are going ahead. So science and research has not been able to shift the big investments, the big policy decisions. And again, that requires us to rethink how we operate and how we mobilize. And for me, this then leads into these kinds of actions around how science can be much more of an open and public, democratizing, conscientizing process that can build in itself, that can build bridges across the region. And I think, again, my friends from the Mekong can speak better to some of the actual practicalities of what is going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Tan Sanbak here? I wanted to make sure that we gave you a chance to speak, but I'm not seeing. I'm not seeing you. Okay, so we'll just keep going then. The Indus Basin. So Ashutosh Mohanty, would you like to respond to this question about community-based action?
Yes, of course, like it's very elaborated. He has mentioned about the various challenges. One challenge, chain of dams are coming up in the various part of Indus Basin, like Indian part, even Pakistan part, even some part of China. So we have to have some common mechanism, also resource to have, how we could have shared the information between the three layers from China, India, then to Pakistan, then to Afghanistan, because all countries are equally, they are sharing the water, the cross-country river basin. So that is the one challenges that everybody has been mentioned. And also I see the climate change is the another aspects that is very, very important aspects of our study, because we are academia and a professor, and we doing like last 30 years different kind of research on various water, provision of clean water and safe water. Particularly in this region now, high density of population growth is very high, and the demand and supply chain has been disturbed. So we have to see how the people could be provided the proper water, clean water and safe water, and other, for the purpose of agriculture, for industry, for other livelihood options, like the waterfall, also for the, that mentioned about the fishery and all. So these are the things in our study, because we focus on the very parameters and various aspects and the all from our research from last 30 years. Secondly, the solution that mentioned the community approach, because we have now government of India has been giving some kind of importance to the community, those who are living the riparian side. From Indian part I'm talking about. When I talk about the Indian, they're bringing the leaders, community leaders, to take the decisions for the irrigation, for agriculture, for other development of that whole basin area, and they can participate for the governance. Now there is 2-3 instances I have seen, because I have visited, because I'm staying in this this Indus Basin region. So they are asking, the government asking particularly the people who are living in this periphery from the Indus Basin. So they can giving the policy dimension, they can giving some suggestions for the future, how they will manage the water and river intact, because the population density is very high and these people are now living in this area and that using that water. So water is stress, you know, that's the another thing, because overuse of the water is become a stressful in the future. So we have to have some kind of have a mechanism to use how to deal with the future challenges like water, because water is very precious for everybody, all the countries, India, Nepal, Pakistan, even Afghanistan. So we three countries, we already worked, and several universities I have associated. So we have to have some kind of study and use some common platform so that we can share the information and the research outcome and knowledge that could be shared among the countries. That I could say. And in future we have some common funding so that we all people, all the researchers could be shared this information, and we also provide some of the scholars to study about the future demand and supply chain of the water. That is my perspective on this water stress.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, and we'll conclude with the Jordan River Basin. Clive, are you here now? If you would like to respond to what's being done on the community level to address access to clean water.
Thank you. So I'll relate to this question in terms of the projects that I'm working on, specifically in two areas. One is in the Jordan Valley in the West Bank, where agriculture is the most important economic activity, even though the Jordan Valley is an arid region that is facing water scarcity. And the second example is in the northern West Bank, which is not so arid, but again, where there are challenges to water scarcity, but from two different perspectives. So in the Jordan Valley, the challenge to water scarcity is that there actually is water available, groundwater, but the groundwater is saline, and overpumping and climate change is increasing the salinity year by year. And this is impacting the farmers' ability to irrigate their crops and to irrigate a more diverse kinds of crops, which would enable them to generate increased income. So in the Jordan Valley, we work very closely with farmers in trying to do a couple of things. One is to introduce the appropriate technology to desalinate brackish groundwater. And the second is to establish the appropriate governance structures at the community level for communities that, on the one hand, face environmental challenges like water scarcity on the other, because these are communities that are within the broader Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The issues to water access, permits, regulations, and so forth is very challenging. So we're trying to address this issue both from a technological perspective and from a governance perspective. In the northern West Bank, the situation is not so much a lack of water. There is rainfall, although again, there is an issue there with climate change. But the question there is that the water, there's a problem in wastewater treatment. And that is posing both an environmental and a public health risk. So in the northern West Bank, we're taking a similar approach, introducing appropriate technology to treat wastewater and to reuse that wastewater in irrigation. So I would suppose the answer to the question is the way that we look at it, or the way that we do our work, is there is an important role in technology for water treatment. And one has to think about what's the social, political, economic, cultural context in what is the most suitable technology. And in essence, at the end of the day, our experience shows that if you don't set up and develop the appropriate governance structures, even if you have the best possible technology, success is limited. So we work very much in thinking about how to propose the appropriate, for example, local community-based institutions for water governance. One of the challenges is that there's a question always arises, who is going to pay for the water? So figuring out things like water tariffs, what should be the appropriate price? How should the money, the fee be collected? Who should be responsible for what purpose should the money go to, and so on and so forth. And then the broader contextual issue of the conflict, which brings about much more challenging issues such as access to water, ownership of water, the question of water rights, sovereignty, and so forth. So all of this is packaged into something that is incredibly complex, and it manifests itself in various challenges but also opportunities at the community level. One thing that we see in our work is there is a certain degree of pragmatism amongst all parties to respond to the water issue, because it's something everybody understands is a resource that is necessary for everybody, and it's simply a zero-sum game if one constantly looks at the water issue through a lens of conflict. So we use our interventions to leverage resilience at the community level with respect to water, but we also look at our interventions in promoting better understanding of where people are coming from in communities with respect to the conflicts in which they are a part of. Even if they're not directly impacted by the conflict, it is always something that is very much part of the activities in the way in which we engage with the communities. So I think I'll stop at that point, and hopefully that gets to some part of what the question was looking for. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I want to also direct people to the chat. There's a very active communication going on in the chat and questions being directed to certain people. And so sometimes I know this can be frustrating with so many people in a session, but please, respond to each other in the chat, and we'll try to, get to whatever we can before we're done. Okay, going to the last question. What is the potential of citizen science and community science to facilitate community scale action on mitigating the influx of pollutants in freshwater rivers, lakes, and streams? So this is, again, focusing on how do we, how can communities be active in this work? And how does science play a role so that science isn't seen only as something that's very far away, but that is something that community members, wherever they are around the world, can actively participate in their own, their own ability to oversee their water sources. I can't think of any more important work right now to be doing on this planet. So in answer to these questions, let's start with the Mekong. I have Chanye. I want to make sure that you have an ability to respond. We haven't called on you yet. If you would want to begin, and otherwise I'll turn to Teerapong to maybe start to respond to that question. So Chanye, are you here? Okay, so maybe not. All right, then Teerapong, would you like to begin to respond?
Yes, in the Mekong country, civil society have practiced or have done the community science research for many years. So we have developed the tool and methodology for a couple of years, but we have to integrate the local knowledge and scientific knowledge to make the research methodology and maybe acceptable by different sectors. So we have to make it simple but effective, understandable, and local community can use. And the citizen science or community science research is a tool is very important, not for only the knowledge generation, but also communication to community and communication from community to the decision maker and the public, and also is the capacity building, networking, collaboration, and to make a policy change. So however, it need to improve. For example, we need the integration, environmental science and social science. We need to improve the methodology to make it acceptable and better. And we need the collaboration, not only different sectors, but also across the border of the Mekong country. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Richard, anyone else from the speakers of the Mekong River Basin like to add anything to this one?
Well, I just like to maybe add to what from Teerapong was saying, because I think this model of villagers conducting their own research based on their own knowledge. I mean, it's still empirical, it's still credible as scientific research, but it's absolutely led by villagers themselves, and the academic community provides support. So it really turns that whole sort of research process on its head. And I think it generates evidence, but it also opens up a dialogue and is supporting a sort of a conscientization. So it's a mechanism to bring people together across different river basins, different parts of a river basin across different borders. So I think it has an enormous potential, and we've been working with Clive and colleagues and Suleiman and colleagues to explore how these kinds of principles can be applied in different contexts. And it really highlights the different values people have about water and what water quality, good, clean, secure water actually means. And I think that can be combined with the kind of things that Clive has been talking about, these disruptive technologies that allow us to manage water at that community scale and not be so dependent on the large-scale infrastructure investments. And as well, the sort of disruptive technologies that allow us to monitor water quality. Everybody, more or less, surprisingly has access to mobile phones and to internet. So there's a huge potential for developing networks of community members monitoring and assessing quality of water, and using this as a basis for making decisions and actions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to the Indus River Basin. Saeed, would you like to respond to this question about community science and citizen science getting involved?
Yes. Okay, so first thing I think is the documentation or documenting, doing the research on different indigenous practices and knowledge on issues such as water quality, conservation, and even the impacts of climate change. And then also importing or communicating how the climate change is kind of affecting the local communities across the basin. And then I think finally it's important to bridge or integrate science-based solutions and community solutions, not only on water quality monitoring, but also on water treatment and water conservation, and also its efficient use across the basin.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, going to the Amazon River Basin, Pilar.
Well, I think it's important to build awareness locally, and these have to take in account what are the cultural values of the people that we are aiming to do this citizen science. And also we have to be aware of things that from academia, we believe that are understood. For example, the phrase, the Amazon basin is the lung of the planet, and that's why we have to take care of it. Maybe the local people doesn't understand quite well how everything they're doing might have a global impact. So we have to start from very simple things. Also, many people is not clear of the thing that if we do something upstream, this is going downstream, and it's gonna impact everybody else in other places. But we also have to link this kind of citizen science with their daily activities. And in the case of the Amazonian region, we tend to think that, an app or Twitter or any social network will work out. It's different. We don't necessarily have internet connections or people that is educated in this networking through the internet. So we have to look for different kind of things. Programs that start at the elementary school and high school levels, and then can grow from then upwards. So it's not an easy task, but it's important. And in academia, because we do it, we tend to use, the social networks for citizen science, and that is not good enough for this area in the Ecuadorian Amazon region.
Yeah, thank you, Pilar. Yeah, I think, just two things I wanted to highlight that you mentioned about the upstream and downstream, and Asim tomorrow is going to talk about highlands to lowlands, and a lot of people on this network are thinking about those issues right now. And then also your point about the getting so many more people involved, high school, college students, people that normally might not be, have access to certain kinds of science academic situations, that we really want to have an outreach to write to communities, because they have a lot of indigenous knowledge and a lot of important things to contribute. So I think that's a big focus of this network now, is to reach people who we wouldn't normally necessarily be able to reach. Okay, so finishing up with this question in the Jordan River Basin, Suleiman or Clive, would you like to respond to how are you seeing the integration of science with communities and their ability to understand, what we need to do in relation to clean water?
I'm going to ask Suleiman to respond first. Then I
thank you, Clive. I would actually, I have a very quick comment about that, and maybe Clive, you can add more afterwards based on the work that you did with, or you are doing with the communities, especially in the West Bank. So one thing to highlight is that also, I totally agree with everything that was discussed from the different river basins. I just want to add, like, the importance of citizen science and how crucial, especially these times, what is like, after the big wave of fake news or post-truth politics and all that, like which happened in the last few years, highlights the importance of actually people should learn more about their water, what's happening with it, what is in it by themselves. There is the trust gap, or the trust issues between governments and the people becoming higher, and we can see that now in the news when we listen to news about water in the Middle East, and we see how the feedback from the people is actually shows lots of mistrust. So involving the local communities in monitoring and understanding what's happening in their water is very important in order to avoid that confusion and this mistrust. Clive, it's all yours now.
Thanks, Suleiman. I'll just say back to the point that Richard referenced on disruptive technologies. For us, when we're talking about citizen science and talking about communities understanding their water sources and what's in their water from a perspective of water quality, we're doing a lot of work on introducing low-cost sensors into the watersheds, which the communities themselves can use, so they get a better sense of what actually is in their water. So if it's salinity, we can use simple and cheap EC sensors, so that the farmers specifically can say, okay, what is the salinity in my water, and what crops can I grow based on that salinity? Should I be diluting my water so that the salinity is reduced? So I think that there's a huge advantage and opportunity now with, I find it quite exciting in the water tech sector, the opportunities with linking water technologies with remote sensing, with artificial intelligence, all of these technologies that are moving very rapidly in other sectors can also be brought into the water sector and can actually empower communities to really understand what is happening with their water source, both from a water quantity perspective. So, for example, easy to install and access flow meters, and with the sensors to understanding what is in their water quality. That information can then be integrated into the governance structure of how the water should be managed, and how the water should be treated, and so forth. So I'm really looking at a lot of opportunities that can definitely be applied to river basins and watersheds across the world, where the technologies are progressing at quite a dizzying pace, and they're getting actually smarter over time, meaning that you can do more, you can gather more information, and if that information is both collected and reported and analyzed and managed in the best possible way, it can be hugely empowering for the communities themselves. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we have 3 more minutes before Bindu is going to wrap up for us. And so we have time for maybe 1 or 2 responses. Is there anyone, so sorry, we could go on for hours, right? If particularly, we would love to hear from all of you. So I really encourage you to contact us after this session if you're interested in joining this network. It's really a group of really incredibly smart, decent, generous human beings who really care about this topic right now around the world. Is there anybody that would like to, I know you're actively using the chat, which is wonderful, but if you would like to say something on screen, that would be fine. And if I don't see anyone, I think Asim, it would be great. We haven't heard from you at all today. And it would be nice maybe to get any response from you about what you've been hearing or questions that you might like to pose.
Susan, thank you so much. This is really very, very exciting session. I really want to thank everybody for participating, our panelists, but also the participants. And in the chat, the discussion that is going on, very interesting, is about the issue of citizen science and the mining and oil industry divergent interests, as well as we need to study and understand more the value of water. So why, for example, water is so critical, but it is valued much less than diamonds, as this discussion has been going on since the 19th century, and all these issues of ecological valuation challenges that are part of this. So the question that I have for any of the panelists, if they want to respond to this, is about the community science and how do we promote community science when there is active opposition to this from the sources of the pollution, like say oil industry in Yasuni National Park in Ecuador, or mining industry, or other big ag that is causing water pollution. So we have faced some challenges in setting up these community science programs in certain parts of the world. I would, for example, mention one project that I worked on was in Peru, in Madre de Dios region with Ministry of Health there, where our sensors were even stolen. So I mean, I'm wondering, if panelists have any comments about how to address this divergent strategic challenge. Is there a way that we can build cooperation with these lobbies and interest groups about advancing community science in these regions?
Would someone like to jump in to respond to that from any of the river basins?
Teerapong, I'm not sure I understand the question correctly, but one thing to make the community participate and want to do the research with us is that the ownership of the research and the result, we have to make them believe that they are not just the population but they are the owner of the knowledge production, or maybe part of the working together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Teerapong. And also, I would just say that, people tend to divide up the social, economic, and environmental assets around the world the way that they see people investing or caring about these things, rather than combining all of them. And sometimes I think we need to get the financial people who care about the environment. Of course, there's some that don't, that would just, are out for profits, but there are people in finance who do care about the environment and care about communities and social assets. And I think that's who we need to really partner with to move that kind of influence and money into our communities. So it's just something to really be thinking about. Okay, I'm going to now turn it over to Bindu to wrap up for us so that we stay on time. And, thank you so much for everyone. And I know Bindu will be will be giving us some thoughts as we move forward. So Bindu, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Greetings, everyone. It's great to gather together at this venue, and what a stimulating event. This event is an example of how we can learn from each other and lift each other up. I wish it was in person. So in this environmental peace building event, we've heard cooperative, community-based science, technological, legal, policy solutions for securing clean water within and across 4 important transboundary river basins in Indus, the Jordan, Mekong, and the Amazon. Collectively, our long-term goal is environmental peace building and water cooperation measures in these focal river basins, with a clear objective of ensuring the availability of clean water for more than 500 million people in these regions. Also, collectively, all of us are reeling from the impacts of the pandemic. It has shown us that local action, science, and policy entrepreneurship can be combined to address a global crisis, including climate change. So the pandemic has inspired many climate-focused advocacy groups and policymakers to take hold of the recovery narrative and to demand that we build back better, build back smarter from the twin shocks of short-term pandemic and the long-term climate change. Though transformational social approaches and policies are required to prevent the human and economic losses currently projected, we have to realize that market-based policies, traditional cost-based climate policies, carbon taxes, and cap and trade policies fall short and are insufficient to achieve the climate transformation or the systemic transformation needed to both drastically reduce greenhouse gas emissions and slow the climate crisis. Such policies focused narrowly on responding to climate crisis and mitigation result in widening economic inequities and racial injustices, because the incentives and benefits are disproportionately distributed to the privileged. Such a system perpetuates structural inequity, concentrating wealth in the top 10% or 1%, and they reduce access to resources. They lead to climate displacement, increased morbidity and mortality of the most vulnerable population. Climate crisis and disasters have the potential to exacerbate the hardship of people who already are bearing the brunt of inequality. In order to prevent catastrophic environmental, physical, structural, and economic damage, we have to incorporate equity, consider the social ecological values, the traditional ecological values, and the historical perspective of land use planning, and address in order to address the local environmental pollution. Equity can be described as stopping current, preventing future, and repairing historic oppression of frontline and vulnerable communities. Also, to a great extent, all of us are talking about aspects of social innovation. Social innovation is an essential part of reducing risks of the worsening climate crisis. The focus on any intervention has to start with community resilience to climate disruptions. We have to engage vulnerable communities in disaster planning, draw on their knowledge and bolster civil society organizations' capacity in planning climate resilience, adaptation, disaster relief, and planning efforts. Community-based organizations have stronger cultural competency, as we have seen, in engaging with their local communities. They have greater levels of trust in the community and more flexibility to explicitly assist these populations in the identification, analysis, intervention, monitoring, and evaluation of disaster risks. In the US, it is not data, but the local efforts of the water protectors that stop the transboundary keystone pipelines. Investment in social civic diplomacy in particular is essential to build back better, a more just, sustainable, and equitable society. In short, issues of transboundary conflicts contributed by growing climate change and other socio-political pressures are simultaneously issues of equity, power, local livelihoods, and environmental justice. Distributive, procedural, and recognitional justice should be an integral part of science and environmental diplomacy and to build local capabilities. So before we end this session, I want to thank all the panelists and participants for attending this important workshop on securing clean water in transboundary Indus, Jordan, Mekong, and Amazon Basin. And tomorrow we will be hosting another workshop on highlands to oceans, anticipatory governance of hydroclimatic regime shifts in the transboundary Indus, Mekong, Jordan, and Amazon River Basin. So we hope to see you there tomorrow. So wish you all a good day. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. See you tomorrow.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
And later today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course,
Thank you.
thank you.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.